Hello everyone, this is Ambitious Painter and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Welcome back everyone. In the previous video, I have shown you how to compose human figures, how to think about composition and how to place the figures effectively. We also looked at different kinds of composition using 1-point and 2-point perspective. In today's video, we are going one step further. I'll show you how a strong foreground, darker shadow areas, corner figures, and proper perspective can make your memory drawing look much more interesting and appealing. Make sure you watch till the end because I'll be sharing step-by-step process and also the mistakes students make during the exam. These small details can completely change the impact of your drawing. Now the exam's over, it's the perfect time to start practicing for next year. If you'll practice consistently, even for a short time every day, you'll see a huge improvement in your memory drawing skills. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. And if you're already good, this practice will help you become better. Today's demonstration will be on the most common memory drawing topic, that is T-stall. It's something we all observe regularly, which makes it easier to understand, remember, and practice. I encourage you to observe real-life scenes around you and sketch human figures whenever possible. Observation is one of the best teachers in art. Also, I thank you all to leave a comment and give me suggestions. One of you requested more composition videos, so this video is for you. More composition lessons are coming soon, along with detailed videos on camera angles, perspective, and eye level. Before moving on to perspective, make sure you're comfortable drawing human figures. If you haven't practiced yet, check out my human figure drawing videos. I'll link them in the description below. Once you're confident with figures, perspective becomes much easier to understand. Now, without wasting more time, let's get started. First, we'll prepare the key sketch for the composition. I won't be explaining perspective in detail in this video because that would make it too long. I'll be creating a separate video dedicated entirely to perspective, so stay tuned for that. For now, I'll briefly show how perspective helps us build a memory drawing. As you can see, I'm drawing lines that converge towards 2 points. This is a 2-point perspective. We have one vanishing point on the left and another on the right. Using these vanishing points, I'm constructing a surface in the middle ground, where the human figures and the main activity of the scene will be placed. This perspective structure helps us organize the composition, maintain proper proportions, and create a convincing sense of depth right from the beginning. A 2-point perspective is used when we view an object or a scene from an angle, allowing us to see two sides at the same time. The lines of the objects recede toward two different vanishing points on the horizon line. In memory drawing, 2-point perspective helps create a stronger sense of depth and make the composition look more realistic. Now you can see that I have placed the figures in the middle ground as I usually do. The main activity of the T-stall scene is happening there. But this time we need something extra in the composition, something that guides the viewer's eye directly toward the main action. That's where a darker foreground figure or a leading object becomes useful. By placing a larger, darker figure near one corner of the composition, we create a visual path that naturally draws the viewer's attention toward the center of the scene. It strengthens the focus and makes the composition feel more purposeful. In the demonstration, I'm placing the figure on the left side to explain the idea. However, in the final drawing, I placed it on the right side because it balanced the composition better and looked more visually appealing. Always remember that composition is flexible. You should place elements where they support the drawing most effectively. Now in the main drawing, you can see that I have first drawn a set of perspective guidelines. This is called a grid. You can draw directly without a grid once you gain confidence, but I'm showing it here so that you can clearly understand the placement of the figures and the perspective structure. Once the grid is established, we can start placing the human figures in perspective. First, decide where the figure will stand and then construct it using the basic figure proportions. You can use the 7.5 or 8 head proportion method to help you place the figure correctly. One thing I always tell my students is never ignore measurement. No matter how much experience you have, measurement is important. Many students want to jump straight into drawing without checking proportions, but strong drawing is built on strong fundamentals. Even professional artists constantly check their work. The difference is that with experience, the checking becomes more intuitive and advanced. At every stage of learning, there's some form of measurement and verification. You need to make sure that the size of the figure is correct, the placement is correct, and that everything follows the perspective of the scene. This is one of the most important rules of perspective drawing. In a 2-point perspective setup, every figure and object must relate properly to the space you have created. If the measurements are right, the drawing will automatically feel more believable and convincing. Now you can see that the scene is already starting to come together. Even at this stage, we can get a clear idea of what the final memory drawing will look like. And the reason for that is not magic, it's the eye level, the horizon line, the perspective setup, and most importantly, the decisions you're making before you draw. I won't go deep into perspective here because I'll be making a separate video where I'll explain eye level, horizon line, viewpoint, vanishing points, and everything else in detail. But for now, remember one thing. Every single thing in this drawing depends on the eye level you choose. The moment you decide where the viewer is standing and from what height they are looking at the scene, the entire perspective structure starts forming around that decision. This is why practice is important. During practice sessions, spend time thinking about these things. Experiment with different eye levels and viewpoints. Then when you're in the exam, you'll be able to construct the scene much more confidently. Many students think that because drawing is an art subject, they should just keep drawing without thinking, but that's not true. Art is not only about drawing, it's about understanding. Art combines many different subjects. We study anatomy, which is connected to biology. We study light, shadow, balance, and gravity, which are connected to physics. We use proportion and perspective, which involves mathematics. We study art history, composition, design, and visual communication. Art is a combination of observation, knowledge, and creativity. So don't just draw mechanically. Practice is important, but practice without thought only develops a habit. Thoughtful practice develops skill and understanding. Whenever you draw, pay attention to what you're drawing and why you're drawing it. Observation is not enough on its own. When you observe a good drawing, watch an artist's work, or learn from a teacher, try to remember the principles behind it. Apply those principles in your own work. Then look at your mistakes and ask yourself what can be improved next time. That process of observing, understanding, applying, and correcting is what helps an artist grow. The key sketch acts as the foundation of your memory drawing and helps you organize the composition. After the key sketch is ready, you can start developing the drawing by adding details. While doing so, pay attention to the quality of the forms. Clothing should look natural and behave like fabric rather than appearing stiff or flat. Add variations in poses, gestures, and clothing details so that the scene feels lively. At the same time, make sure your human figures maintain proper proportions. Perspective should always guide the size of the figures. A figure that is closer to the viewer should appear larger, while figures farther away should gradually become smaller. This difference in size helps create depth and makes the space feel convincing. Always keep checking your proportion and perspective as your work. Small adjustments can make a big difference in making the scene look realistic. Perspective is one of the most important tools in memory drawing because it helps you create the illusion of depth on a flat sheet of paper. Without perspective, figures and objects may look as if they are floating or pasted onto the page rather than existing in a believable space. The basic rule of perspective is that objects appear smaller as they move farther away from the viewer. All the elements in your drawing, people, buildings, roads, benches, tea stalls, vehicles, and even shadows must follow the same spatial logic. Once you establish the eye level and the vanishing points, every object in the scene should relate to that perspective system. In memory drawing, perspective is not only about buildings and straight lines. It also helps you place human figures correctly. A person standing closer to the viewer should appear larger, while people farther away should become progressively smaller. I'm repeating this again and again, so keep that in mind. One interesting way perspective helps in memory drawing is that it helps you decide what not to draw. Most beginners think perspective is only about making things look correct, but it also helps simplify a scene. Once you know where the viewer is standing, you automatically know which figures will be visible, which ones will overlap, and which details can be ignored. This saves a lot of time during exams. Another thing perspective does is create hierarchy. Not every figure in a memory drawing deserves the same amount of attention. The figures closest to the viewer can have more detail, stronger contrasts, and clearer features, while figures farther away can be simplified into basic shapes and silhouettes. This is exactly how we see in real life. Perspective isn't only changing size, it's changing the amount of information we see. A useful idea is to think of perspective as a stage director. Imagine you're directing a movie scene at a tea stall. Where would you place the camera? Who would be closest to the camera? Who would be in the background? Which figure would partially block another figure? These decisions instantly make a memory drawing feel more cinematic and natural. Another perspective trick is to use overlapping deliberately. Students often leave equal gaps between figures, which makes the scene look arranged rather than observed. In reality, people overlap each other constantly. A figure covering part of another figure immediately creates depth without drawing a single perspective line. Perspective can also help create mood. A lower eye level makes people appear taller and more important, while a higher eye level allows the viewer to see more of the environment and activity. So perspective isn't just a technical tool, it can change how the viewer feels about the scene. When I am drawing a memory drawing, I often ask myself, if this scene were a photograph, where would I stand to take it? The single question solves many composition problems because it forces me to think about viewpoint, depth, focus, and storytelling at the same time. So instead of thinking of perspective as rulers, grids, and vanishing points, think of it as a tool that helps you choose what the viewer sees, what they notice first, and how they travel through the drawing. That's where perspective becomes really powerful in memory drawing. Let me ask you a question. Why do some memory drawings feel alive while others feel like stickers pasted on a page? The answer is often space. Most students focus on drawing objects. Good artists focus on drawing the space between objects. Look at the gap between two figures. Look at the distance between the tea stall and the customer. Look at the empty area where someone could walk through. That's space. If the space feels believable, the drawing feels believable. Here's another question. Why do crowds in students' drawings often look awkward? Because everybody gets VIP treatment. Every figure gets the same amount of detail, the same amount of attention, and the same amount of importance. But that's not how reality works. In real life, Some people are close, some are far, some are partially hidden, and some are barely visible. Perspective gives you permission to lose information. In fact, losing information is often what makes a drawing feel more realistic. Think about a movie scene. Can you clearly see every person in a crowded marketplace? Of course not. Some are silhouettes, some are blocked, some are tiny shapes in the distance. That's exactly what would happen in your memory drawing. Here's a challenge. Next time you're drawing, ask yourself, what happens if I remove this figure? If the drawing becomes stronger, remove it. Perspective isn't about adding more things, it's about organizing the right things. Another idea I want you to think about is this: perspective creates gravity. What do I mean by that? When perspective is correct, figures feel attached to the ground. They feel heavy. They belong in the scene. When perspective is wrong, figures look like they are floating, sliding, or about to fall over. Even if the viewer doesn't know why something looks wrong, they can feel it. The moment you start asking these questions, you're no longer just drawing, you're designing an experience for the viewer. And that's when memory drawing starts becoming art instead of just an exam answer. And don't underestimate the small details. A memory drawing doesn't feel alive only because of the figures and perspective. It also feels alive because of the little things that tell a story. Look at the tea stall signboard, the handwritten lettering, the names of the tea brands, the menu board, the hanging packets, the kettle, the cups, or even a small poster on the side. These details may seem insignificant, but they help transform a simple drawing into a believable space. Think about it. If we remove all these small details, the drawing still works, but it feels generic. The moment we add them, the scene starts developing a personality. It begins to look like a real tea stall rather than a basic structure with a few figures around it. However, there's a balance. Details should support the story, not distract from it. The viewer should first notice the main action and then gradually discover the smaller details as they spend more time looking at the drawing. These little touches are what make people feel that the artist has actually observed the world. They create atmosphere, character, and authenticity. Sometimes a small signboard, a handwritten word, or a few carefully chosen objects can add more life to a memory drawing than an extra figure or an extra building. So while working on your drawing, don't only think about the big shapes, ask yourself what small details would naturally exist in this place. Those details are often what make the scene feel truly lived in. I hope you liked this video. Please give it a big thumbs up. If you want to watch more videos like this one, please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon to get the instant notification on my latest video releases. This is Ambitious Painter signing off. Thank you.